All right. Boker Tov, everybody. Yes. So, okay. So today we're learning for Avigdor Chai Avram ben Rachalea Mer Tzvi and Eliezer ben Menachem Mendel. Got it. Okay.
Chaim ben Meir Leib.
And Chaim ben Meir Leib. Very good. Thank you. Your says today, all the Shemot Shev Aliyah. Okay. We are chapter 4, Parak Dalid, and we are in the middle. We're going to finish up Mishnah Bet, number 2. I have a couple more things. I don't like saying we. I have a couple more things to talk about in this particular Mishnah. And we were left off last time, we were talking about the concept of how at first it might be difficult to do something wrong, and slowly but surely you kind of get sucked in. This is very similar to what we saw recently in Mishne, by the way, if you're following the class. And I'm going to read to you the very, very first pasuk in all of Tehillim, which should be relatively well known. And that because it's well known, sometimes you may kind of just run through it and not even realize what it's actually saying. The first pasuk in Tehillim says as follows: Happier is the person who doesn't walk in the counsel of the evil, nor did he stand in the presence or in the way of the with sinners. And he didn't sit with leitzim. Leitzim, we've all kind of meanings, but in this case, just like bums. People just sit around and have anything to do. People are scoffers. But you'll notice that in one pasuk David HaMelech uses 3 verbs. He says, halach, amad, yashav. It's the concept of a progression. He says, why happy is the person who doesn't walk with people who are rishayim or evil. Then, okay, you get a little bit used to that. Maybe after a while, then you don't stand still with this group of sinners. And eventually you're in their living room and Moshav Leitzim Lo Yashav. Then you didn't sit among them with them. Again, he's trying to point out that there's actually a progression when it comes to doing things that you're not supposed to do. And that's really what part of this Mishnah is about. So reread the Mishnah now, again, just quickly. It's being desensitized. That's correct. We talked about most of this Mishnah already. You should run to do a simple mitzvah like a difficult one. Uborech is number 2, yeah. Uborech mina avera, and run away from an avera, from a sin. Shemitzvah goret mitzvah, avera goret avera. Shescha mitzvah mitzvah, shescha avera avera. That if one mitzvah brings another mitzvah, that an avera brings another avera, and the reward of a mitzvah is a mitzvah, and the reward of a sin is sin. Oh, what do you mean reward? So as I mentioned last time we were finishing up, like, how do we understand this? So what is first of all, what does it mean? Sheschar mitzvah, mitzvah. So in other words, if you put on tefillin, you light Shabbat candles, you take challah, you take a lulav and etrog, that the reward is you get to do it in the mitzvah. Why is that? How is that a reward? How is that something positive? I mean, of course it's positive to do mitzvah, but why is that a quote reward? Because every mitzvah is another opportunity to serve Hashem. So we're given more and more opportunities. I gave you that example last week of selling copy machines in Ottumwa, Iowa versus downtown Manhattan. Just there are more opportunities. So the more you do, let's say a person in that person's in sales. They're given a small district. Okay, maybe it's a potential of 100 customers, and they do very well. So they may be given a bigger district. Why? Because it gives them more opportunities because they're doing well. It is Havdil in a similar way. When we're doing mitzvot and we do things properly and we do the mitzvah, we're given more opportunities to do more mitzvah. But wait a minute, don't we already have certain opportunities? Like every day we have to put on tefillin or we have to daven, or whatever. We have certain specific functions that we have to. But there are things that we can't control. That are mitzvot that are brought to us. Example, you walk into a park or you're walking down the street and you find a wallet with someone's name on it. Okay, you can't do hashavat avidah, returning a lost object, without somebody losing something, right? It just kind of goes hand in hand. You can't say, take something out of someone's pocket, hey, look what I found, I'll return it. It doesn't work that way, right? So we have other opportunities to do other mitzvot that may not be ones that we have the opportunity always to do. Also could be the opportunity to do a mitzvah, but in a better way. When we get more in tune or more into how we're doing a mitzvah, then we do the next mitzvah, or even that same one, we may do it hopefully in a better way. Also could be that the reward, the mitzvah, mitzvah, is that you get both in this world and the next world, but whatever it is. But because we also know that the sachar, the reward, is habali taher misayin oto, or misayin lo, which means someone who wants to do the right thing. They want to change. They want to do the mitzvah better, or they don't do the mitzvah, now they want to do it. Hashem helps them along the way. So the reward of the mitzvah, of doing the mitzvah, is the reward of being able to do another mitzvah where Hashem will help you to do it. But the persons that say don't keep Shabbat, or they keep it, what they call half Shabbat, half Shabbos, yeah. And they decided it's timed up their game. So the reward is that Hashem helps them keep that mitzvah in a better fashion as well. But the more troubling statement is, schar aveira aveira, that the reward for an Aveira is like, if I knew I was going to get a reward for an Aveira, I wouldn't be standing here teaching. There's all kinds of bad things we could all be doing, right? It's a reward. So we're misunderstanding the word. It's first of all, it could just be poetic mirror, meaning like it's just using the opposite of the mitzvah part, and it could just be a literary tool, and that's it. But this is the Mishnah. Okay, you could say that it's possible, because sometimes Rabbi Yehuda Nasi does that, the Mishnah, but it doesn't make necessarily full sense here. When a person, the Bartanura is not wine. It's named after the Ravadia Bartanura, who was a commentary on Mishnah. I actually had a kid years ago ask me, how do you say it? Why did they name Rashi after the wine? Said they didn't name Rashi after the Rashi wine. Rashi was a vintner. He was a person who sat and learned, and he worked, like Rabbi Yochanan Sandlar and other religious Jews who worked and also learned. I know it's tough to understand that, especially today, literally today, this afternoon. I forgot where I was going with this. So the Bartanura, yeah. So I told him that the Rashi was a vintner. He grew grapes and had vineyards and all, and that's why they named the bottling after him. Anyways, so Bartanura says that when a person does an Aveira, and they're already used to doing it, or maybe they're not used to it, but they got away with something, or there was a certain joy. They had like this feeling, not just smug, but like, that was good. That was fun. I'd like to do that. Oh, smirk. I thought it was smug. Okay, good. Yes, a smirk. Or they get some other inner feeling like, oh, that was good. That joy is also an Aveira, meaning the Sachar, the reward, quote unquote, they gave themselves. The joy they got out of that Aveira is an Aveira itself. So not just doing the Aveira, but that which came with it. There's a very troubling pasuk, which we talked about probably a couple times over the years, but it fits in here in Parshat Ki Tavo, when it is discussing all the curses, all the bad things that could happen to Am Yisrael if we don't do the right thing. And it says in the pasuk, because you didn't serve Hashem, b'tuv lev, you didn't serve Hashem with joy, you get all these curses. So that means this morning, because I didn't put on tefillin with a joyous dance in my heart, I deserve all those punishments. It's not what it means. There's many, many, many comments, especially we're not going to get to it now. Then in Tanya, he chops up the pasuk into multiple steps, and it's fantastic. But it means that you didn't serve Hashem, and that brought you joy. That you didn't do the mitzvah, or that you did the Aveira. It brought you joy because you didn't serve Hashem, and it was done b'tuv lev. It was done with a happy heart. So in a sense, the saying is that tuv lev, that joy that a person felt, is also part of the Aveira. That's one. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to end that Mishnah with this. I'm going to look at the next Mishnah, Mishnah Gimel number 3. Now, before we start it, understand that Pirke Avot is a book about Derech Eretz. It's about Tikkun Midot, how we correct our character traits and all kinds of things. And on the surface, this Mishnah just sounds like good advice. It doesn't necessarily sound like we're working on our Midot. It doesn't sound like we're working on Derech Eretz per se, but let's take a look and we'll see what happens. Hu haya omer, who is the who? Ben Azai in the prior Mishnah. Hu haya omer, al ti'ibaz l'chol adam. don't be, I want your English translation because it could be about 5 different ways. It could be deceitful or distrustful or scornful, right? Okay, scornful of anybody. Okay? Oh, even better. Do not regard anyone with contempt. Despise. Okay, that's why I said there's all different possibilities here.
Don't treat anyone with disrespect.
Oh, every one of these, by the way, fits. Every one of them what we're going to talk about. And also, don't distance yourself from anything. Okay, that's very innocuous, very ambiguous. Like, what does that mean? We'll see. There is no such thing as a person who doesn't have his time in this world. And there's nothing in this world that doesn't have its place. And I'm sure that's very clear to everybody. We can just move on. Right? That's it. Okay, it's very, no, not at all. Not at all. We need to talk about this a lot. How we relate to Hashem's world, how we relate to people and things or creations in this world. There are two perspectives on this Mishnah. I'm going to give you the minority opinion, which is Rashi, which is unusual. So Rashi usually is the majority opinion, but minority opinion is that this is a very negative perspective. Then we'll see a positive perspective shortly. Rashi says as follows. Don't, what would some of the words you used? Despise, treat with contempt, disrespect anybody, because you never know when it's going to come back to bite you. You never know. The same person that you ran over with your shopping cart on someone's foot, you didn't even bother saying, excuse me. Now because you're on your way rushing to a job interview, you turn out that he or she is the interviewer, right? Okay. That's Rashi's perspective. It says also, it's Rashi and a few others, that don't discriminate against other people because of the same reason. Not because it's the right thing to do, but because you don't know how it's going to hurt you and harm you. Which is, again, it's a very negative approach. You're doing it so you don't get hurt and for not the right reason. Don't underestimate any danger, no matter how remote it might be, because something could pop up. We have the famous story, and this one is very well known. You can't go through a Tisha B'Av without hearing the names Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, where the big guy wants to have Kamsa invited to his party. The accident, the guy invites Bar Kamsa, who he hated, the one running the party. He comes to the party, and the one running the party wants the Bar Kamsa thrown out. He says, don't embarrass me. Don't embarrass me. I'll pay for half the food. I'll pay for half your party. No, this also shows you the power of hatred. He says, no, get out. I'll pay for the entire party. Nope, you're out of here. Out, throws him out. The long story short ends up that because of this, and then a man named Avkulis, Ben Avkulis, the Beit HaMikdash gets destroyed. Okay? So, again, he disrespected him. He didn't treat him with the contempt. Whatever the other words were, that little act, which wasn't so little, was a big time. It's what they call the butterfly effect. And part of the other problem was that the rabbis were sitting there and saw the whole thing and didn't say a word. Right. It's terrible. Yeah, it's really bad. Instead, today you have so-called rabbis saying, vote for Zohar Mamdani. Yeah. Anyways, however, because this is such a negative approach, really just don't do something because it might hurt you or might come back to bite you. Rashi says, most people don't accept this as the explanation of this particular Mishnah. Rav Lau said, I love these 4 words. When hatred starts to awaken, revenge starts to burn. And that's like, that's a nice piece of advice. Also, you be very careful about, you don't want to hate anybody. And I really have to work with that sometimes, some days. Right, Mark? No. Sometimes more than others, yeah. They say, hell hath no fear like a woman's scorn, right? Again, that's the idea of what you do now. It could cause, by the way, who said that? I always thought it was Shakespeare. It's not. Close. No, much earlier, much earlier than him. It's another William. William Cosgrove. 1697. He wrote it in a play. It's almost the exact quote, but it's not. There's some words that come before it, and he changed it. I don't remember the name of the title. You can look it up. But because we like to look at positive approach, much more goodness, we're going to take a look at a different way. You should not be mizalzel. You shouldn't cheapen somebody. You shouldn't deride anybody. You shouldn't do all these verbs we mentioned before, because everyone has a purpose and reason for being in this world. Every single person, we're going to see every single thing also. We'll talk about that in a couple minutes. Everyone has their time. The person may have a specific tafkid job in this world that is like, what is this person? This just takes up space, right? But there's some purpose. It may have been this whole reason this person exists was to make sure that someone who was about to fall down the stairs didn't. Again, we'll never know these kind of things. But because everyone has this, she'en lecha adam she'en lo, what was the word? She'en lecha adam she'en lo sha'a. There's no such thing as a person who doesn't have his hour. It could be much more than an hour. We're going to see it means something else shortly. But there's always a purpose for someone, because if there was no purpose for that person to live, Hashem would allow that person to be born. Mm-hmm. That person should. Now, it's attributed to the Kotzker, and it's attributed to Rabbi Nachman, but it's not really clear exactly who said the statement that the day you were born is the day Hashem decided the world needed you. I know I've seen it quoted from the Kotzker Rebbe, and I've seen it quoted from Rabbi Nachman, but again, it's kind of unclear. So that's one approach. The Yosef's brothers say they want to throw him in a pit, they want to kill him, whatever we're going to do, and they say, let's do away with it. Let's see what will happen with his dreams then. And we know how the story, of course, unfolds, and eventually Yosef is sitting at a table with his brothers, before he's even sitting at the table, they're shocked, like when Yosef reveals himself, who he is, and he says, you thought to do evil to me. However, Hashem sent me ahead of you in order that I should be the one who will be able to give parnas, to give food to the entire country and to you. Now, the way it happened is terrible. It's terrible, right? That means there's so many different ways that Hashem can send a message for something to happen. For example, if I, God forbid, I'm standing at the top of the staircase and I push someone down the stairs, from the person falling down the stairs, from her perspective, it was meant to be. That was the moment in life when they were supposed to fall down the stairs. From my perspective, I chose to do the one to do it, and it's like a mind-blowing kind of thing. So I could say, what do you mean I have to pay you? That's what God wanted. Of course it's assault. But I have a choice. But if that person was meant to fall down the stairs, it could have been a rock they could have tripped on, could have got tripped up on a shoelace. I didn't need to be that one. Same thing we saw with Paro. When Hashem tells Avram Avinu in Brit Ben Abtarim, he said, your children, your family will be strangers in a strange land, and they're going to be enslaved. And doesn't say the Egyptians are going to do it. The Egyptians are only carrying out God's will, so what do they get so punished for? Again, it could have been Iranians, Yamachshamam, it could have been anybody else. Why the Egyptians chose to be the Shaliach to do the will of God. But there's another perspective here. Take a look at the word, because it's a little bit unusual. Look again. She'en lecha adam she'en lo sha'a. There's no such thing as a person who doesn't have his hour. Okay, that's an unusual. Rav Kahati says sha'at hatzlacha. He has a moment at least of success. Okay, but it's an unusual word. You could just say she'en lecha adam she'en lo tafkid, she'en lo zman. A tafkid is a job. Zman is time, but a sha'a. Why specifically a measure of time of 1 hour? I can't hear you.
You have a modern phrase.
Yes.
15 minutes.
15 minutes of fame. Right. Andy Warhol. Right. I think Andy Warhol used that expression. Yeah.
So
right. Okay. Good. Okay. So one thing is you say that there's this slice of time that everyone has in their life that's something. Okay. Right. Okay. That's one aspect. But there's also the possibility it's referring to a specific story. Maybe. a story somewhat well known about a man named Elazar ben Durdia. Elazar ben Durdia, I'm going to put it here on my screen just so I can see if I have it. I do. Okay, and I'm going to come back with a couple of things to mention I put on my screen. Okay, Elazar ben Durdia was a really bad guy. Says there was no prostitute he never slept with. There was no avodah zarah he didn't bow down to. He was just a real bad guy. And one day he hears a bat kol. He hears a heavenly voice that says, everyone has a place in the world to come except Elazar ben Durdia. And by the way, Rabbi Meir, Elisha ben Abuya hears the same thing, who was a teacher of Rabbi Meir, who became the man named Noz Acher. But right now, let's just focus on this story. It says that Elazar ben Durdia hears a heavenly voice that says, you're toast. When you die, you're not going to the good place. Shakes him up. I'm going to read to you a few lines of the Gemara because it's really worth listening to the words. Okay? And it's also very often misquoted. That's what I want to clarify. He went and he sat down between two mountains and hills. Amar, and he said, he turned to the mountains and to the hills and said, do me a favor, talk to God. Ask him for mercy for me. Now, the word's misquoted. I hear it 100 times saying, Bikshu alai rachamim. Bikshu means past tense. They requested mercy for me. Bakshu is the command form. Amrulo. So the mountains responded, Ad shanu vakshim alecha. Before we ask for mercy for you, we have to ask for ourselves. So tough luck. So he went to the Shamayim va'aretz. He went to heaven and the earth and said, Bakshu alai rachamim. Again, they said, before we ask for you, we have to ask for ourselves. And he quotes the pasuk wide. He asks the sun, he asks the moon, he asks the stars, he asks the constellations, and finally, he says the following statement. Amar, he said to himself, Ein hadavar talui ela bi. The matter is only in my hands, not in anyone else's. Hiniach rosho al birkav. He put his head on his lap. And he screamed and cried. At that moment, until his soul left him, another heavenly voice came out and said, Rabbi Elazar ben Durdia mizuman l'chayei olam haba. Rabbi Elazar ben Durdia goes straight to heaven. And the Gemara discusses the idea that yesh koneh olamo bisha'a achat. There are people who are able to acquire their entire world, meaning olam haba, in 1 hour, in one moment. Now, it does not mean that a person should spend their whole life being a Russia, and when they know they're on their deathbed, go, oh, please, hospital beds, daven for me. Okay, yeah, it's about me. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Right? No, it doesn't work that way. Okay, but it means someone who's sincere, someone who really takes it to heart, someone who. So, in a sense, that this Mishnah is telling us, according to one approach, that don't do all these different virtues said to other people, because everybody has their moment when they're going to be a tzaddik. Who goes straight to God forbid? Who goes straight to Gan Eden? Who goes straight to Gan Eden? Tzaddikim, people who are so above what maybe some we can think of. All you Bezrat Hashem, straight after 120, you should have Mashiach anyway, so it doesn't make a difference. So that's another possibility. This mission is referring to this idea that everyone has this moment in time where they're so connected to Hashem, and how dare you be disrespectful to that person, even though they may deserve it at that moment. You got to look beyond what's going on in front of you. We have another situation, which go back a little bit, where you don't know exactly who you're dealing with, and also you never know what might come back to haunt you. I'll tell you another story in the Gemara. Before Rabbi Akiva was Rabbi Akiva, he was just Akiva. So he was not a bum. He just was an Amaretz. He didn't know anything. And after some time, he worked as a shepherd for a man named Kalva Savua. That name may sound familiar to you if you know the story of Kamsa Bar Kamsa, because his name is mentioned over there. It meant he's called. It's a very weird name. It means dog that is satiated. So it was probably his nickname, because it said that anyone who came to his house hungry as a dog left completely satiated, because he would help people all the time. He was a tzaddik, one of the tzaddikim of his generation. So Akiva ben Yosef, who becomes Rabbi Akiva, is working as a shepherd for Kalba Savua. While he's working for him, Kalba Savua happened to have a very pretty daughter. And Akiva's looking at her, and she's looking at him and saying, maybe we'll check on points of contact on Facebook and see if we can get someone to make a shidduch between us. So she goes to her father and said, listen, you're shepherd. We want to start dating. This looks like a thing. And he says, you start to go out with him. I mean, I didn't use the word going out. I'm cutting you off financially. Cutting you off. That's it. We're done. Because he saw a shepherd. He didn't see Rabbi Akiva, obviously. So he just saw Akiva, but then Yosef. Correct. She goes against her parents' wishes. She marries him. And she's cut off. She has no money. It's not like he's rolling in the dough either. Probably got B2 Achlumi or stuff. Okay, but fast forward many, many years later. And by the way, when Kavah Savua said he cut her off, he took a neder. I take an oath, I'm not giving you any money. Fast forward many, many years later, we know, of course, that Rabbi Akiva becomes the Rabbi Akiva. He's married to this wonderful, amazing woman. And he is coming back. The story is told in different ways, but he's basically coming back after being away for many years from teachings, coming back, and his wife is coming to greet him, and they're saying, keep away from him. And he says, stop, stand down, because everything I have, everything you have is because of her. Shali b'shalachem, everything you have and I have, shala, it belongs to her. So, meaning it was because of her. She allowed me to do all this and enabled me to get to this point in life. In one of these mifkashim, one of these meetings, Kalba Savua wanted to go out to greet this gadol. He didn't know who was coming, this great man. And he realizes after some time that you're Rabbi Akiva. Like, he didn't say these words, but like, I know you from somewhere. The shepherd boy that I had? And he says to him, had you known I would become who I became, would you have allowed your daughter to marry me and also not made that oath? Says, if I had known you would teach me one Mishne, I would never have made that oath. So he nullified the oath on the spot. There's halacha in nidarim that in oaths that if you have a petach, a reason to say, let's say I take an oath, I'm saying believe that, I believe that, I'm never going to drink wine again. And then it turns out that I have to make kiddush Friday night. Okay, so I use wine. I don't use grape juice, but so had you known that it was going to stop you from making kiddush, would you have made the oath? No. So then I'm allowed to get with the hatat nidarim to get rid of that. Okay, so it says at the end of the Gemara, read a line. It says nafal ala peh. So Kalba Savua fell on his face. V'nashkei al karei, and he kissed the hands of Rabbi Akiva. V'yayvle palga mimamon, and he gave him half of his wealth. Nafal Kalba Savua v'simcha. He kissed him on his legs, actually, not his hands, which I've told you I've done. Not worth it now. Anyways, so here we have again. He was acting in such a way when his daughter wanted to marry this man who he didn't. Now, there are times you don't approve of somebody because you can see the writing on the wall. It's just not a good guy, or vice versa. But sometimes it's just like, oh, he's just this station. He's just a shepherd. He's just a clerk, or whatever it might be. Got to be very careful with that, and that's part of what this Mishnah is also telling us. Let me get this here on the screen. There's this other one here. Okay, I'm not going to use this one. Okay, there was one other example. I don't need to use another one. Fine. Okay. So it also says not just about people, but ein lecha davar. There's also no such thing she'ein lo makom, that doesn't have its place. That Hashem didn't create anything for no reason. Levatala, nothing. There are things that we don't understand that they exist. Why the heck do we have sandflies? Why do we have mosquitoes? Right? Bees. Well, bees are, we know, bees are good, right? They give us honey, right? But they also, they help pollinate the, that's right. That's true, right? But mosquitoes, now, yes, we know within certain animal kingdom, the certain things they eat. This one that helps protect you, and this one helps that. Of course, that's the whole ecosystem and all that other nice fancy words. But do you know the story with David HaMelech and why he asked God about certain things? He asked Hashem, why did he create crazy people, spiders, and bees? The third thing. No, it was the third thing. Spiders. Hold on. Spiders, crazy people, and there was the third thing. I never remember the third thing. You look it up? Thank you. Tell me what the third, when you find it. Okay, so the crazy people, oh, it does. Okay. Oh, it really does? Oh, okay, cool. Because I'm just thinking about this now. I assumed that if I thought about it now, obviously someone put it in a book. So that's what I'm trying to, he's going to look it up. So Hashem says, I promise you, you're going to need it, all three of them. So one time he's in the city where there's this king who really would kill him, and he acts like a crazy man. The king says, just get him in Lachish, and by Gat, he says, just get this guy out of my country. I have enough crazy people in there. It saved his life. There's one time he's being pursued, and he runs into a cave, and the spider very quickly makes us by Shaul. Thank you. That's right. That's right. And but I usually tell the story when I go with people down to Engedi. And he goes into this cave, and a spider quickly makes a web. And now obviously he's not in there. Shaul is not going to be there. So he needed a spider. I thought the third one was a bee. I think it did sting somebody who was. You'll tell me when you find it. Well, maybe. I don't know. Okay, we'll find out. Okay. But every creation has a purpose. Now, even though we can't appreciate it, we can't understand it, the first person to learn that lesson was Noah, which we just saw last week. How is that a lesson? So it says that, I'll read a pasuk from last week's parasha. This is after the flood starts to subside. He sends out the raven. If you need it, we have plenty of them here. He went out and he came back and forth. And he sent it out, meaning the Midrash says, in the word of like Gerushin, he just get out of my face. I don't want you here anymore. He wasn't really sending him necessarily like the dove to see the one. I wanted him out of here because the Orev evidently didn't do certain good things on the Teva, on the ark. And Noah felt, you know what? I don't need this guy. Out of here. You're out of here. And Hashem says to him, Kablu, accept him. Bring the Orev back in. Why? Because eventually the world's going to need the Orev. Eventually the world's going to need the raven. Fast forward to Sefer Melachim, Book of Kings, where a man named Eliyahu Hanavi is in a place called Nachal Krit, Kaf Resh Yud Taf, also known as Nachal Kris. And he has no food. And a raven brings him, not only does he bring him food, he doesn't bring him bamba, he brings him steak off the king's table, takes it and brings it to Eliyahu Hanavi. It's an amazing story. But there was a need. Brings it from the table of Achav, who was an evil king, married to a wonderful woman named Jezebel. Izebel, yes. Tishma Keni. So you see that whereas maybe at the moment, as they say, Ba'asher Husham, which is a phrase you're going to see when we talk about Ishmael in a couple next week. That's okay, whatever. There is going to be a purpose. There will be a need. Has it ever happened to you, and it's not a good example maybe, that you find something and you say or I don't know if I'll ever need this, but I'll put it in a drawer. And then all of a sudden, a couple years later, you need it. I hit a nerve here, yeah? Or you throw it out, and the next day you said, what the heck? I had it for 10 years, and now I threw it out, and now I don't have it? Yes. In my marriage, there are two people. There's a saver and a thrower-outer. I'm a thrower-outer, and Andy's the saver. Yeah. And I'm always like, get rid of it. So, and as soon as we do, she's always right. Even a human Russia, or an animal that appears to be a bad animal, there's some purpose within this world. What would be the purpose of a Russia? I'm talking about a Jewish person who's a Russia. I'm not talking about these Yamach Shemami. I'm talking about a person who's Jewish. What do you mean there's a purpose for Russia? Hashem didn't create a Russia. He didn't create an evil person. That person chose to be evil. Not everyone can be a tzaddik. Not everyone has the ability because they don't have the special neshama, whatever it might be. But to be a Rasha, that's an absolute choice. Yeah, nurture, nature, but somehow or other, you become a person becomes a Rasha. Why would Hashem want reshut? Why would Hashem want? Well, first of all, for the simple idea of free choice. That's obvious. But there's another reason. Everyone knows somebody who maybe it was last week, 10 years ago, 30 years ago, was just not such a nice person. And they turned their life around. And they became a good person, a giving person, a kind person, a person who did mitzvot. Maybe not the best, maybe not even Shomer Shabbat, but they've grown. You might think that somebody like any other Gedolei Hador, which there are very few nowadays, the great leaders of our generation, because most of them are just followers, that like only they don't need to change. Like, I wish I could be like them, right? I can guarantee you that Rav Kanievsky Zatzal, Chaim Kanievsky, who basically learned from about 2 a.m. till 11:30, 12 o'clock at night, basically almost 24 hours a day, he never said to himself, man, I'm really happy with where I'm at in life. Look at what I've been able to accomplish, how much I can learn, how I help people. I can guarantee you he always felt he understood, like I'm sure Moshe Rabbeinu, that he was a certain tamut, a certain personality, that people turned to him, and that he had a certain tafkid or job here in this world. But he never, ever would have said to his wife, you know what, I've reached the top. That's it. I don't have to grow anymore. No, because the more you grow, the more you realize you have more to grow. When a person, if I've told you the story, sorry if I'm repeating it. I was on an airplane from Israel to the United States. I told the story about the Somalians. Okay. I was on a plane from Israel to the United States, number of years. I wasn't living here. I was going back home to the United States. At that point, it was still my home. And there were about 20 or 30 Somalians who came onto the airplane to fly back to New York. It stunk. They looked awkward. The flight attendants had to show them how to use the toilet. So how to push the door in or how to lock it, how to flush a toilet. They'd never seen flush toilets. No one wanted to sit near them. Everyone was like, ugh. And in the middle of the flight, and I remember I came home that Shabbat, I spoke in shul and I said this. I stood up, I said, I'm ashamed of myself. Because imagine it was 1945, and these are people who are coming from Nazi Germany, being able to put on a plane from the concentration camps after they started to get a little healthier and being flown somewhere to be saved, to live. Ugh, I don't want to sit next to that. That's disgusting. Okay, these people didn't know any different. That was their life. They didn't know what flush toilets were. Why is that my fault? Right? Why should why should I blame them? And this idea of sitting with these people, which honestly I said, like, ugh, they stink. I don't want to sit anywhere near them for 12 hours or whatever it was. And I felt ashamed that I said, I really did. I thought about the survivors and all that. But what's my point here? These people from Somalia, and even in some cases, third world countries today, they don't know how bad they have it until they're in a much better situation. Why is it on the night of Pesach we say, whoever doesn't say the following 3 things on Pesach, he didn't fulfill his obligation. They are Pesach, Matzah, Maror. That's the wrong order. Korban Pesach, Matzah, and Maror. It didn't happen in that order. It happened first, Maror, bitter. Then they made Matzah, and then they had the Korban Pesach. It's the wrong order. So I start off with Pesach, Matzah, and Maror is last. Because until they had the Matzah and the Maror, which represented freedom, they didn't understand how Maror, how bitter their lives were. And that's what's also being said here. The things that we don't understand, whether it's people or other creations of Hashem, why they are, what they are, who they are, when Hashem has his reasons. We may not see it. We may not ever see it or understand, but there's reason for it. Okay, that's fine. I'm going to stop here because I don't want to go into next Mishnah. Is going to be an introduction to it, but we'll stop here. But so this Mishnah, even on the outside, it may seem just like good advice. It's really given us some very good insight into who we are and what we can be as far as our perspective vis-a-vis other human beings. Not just don't do something because it's going to come back to bite you, but you don't know what, like they say, you don't know what goes on in people's houses, oh, they must be so happy in life when really it's terrible. So, okay, I'll be quiet there. I'll stop there. So, you're very welcome. Have a wonderful day. And Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.
Thank you.